There has been a special delivery here at the Shmuseum. Yes, this is the Lamborghini Revuelto, and today we're heading out with this, the new V12 Raging Bull, for a drive on some familiar roads. I have to say, it blends right in here at the garage. This orange, a Rancho Apodis, in fact, one of two orange V12 Lambos here at the moment, with Richard from Challenge the Road's Murcielago SV. But this is Lambo's new super going on hypercar. I've been lucky to drive it before, in fact, in anger at Vallelunga in Italy during the global media drive, an opportunity to push on full throttle out on the racetrack. But there's something different about driving a car like this on roads that you know well, in an environment that you know well. And Lamborghini had asked me to hold back until they could provide a car, so I've resisted the opportunity to drive any customer cars until this is here. And today, I want to show you a lot more about it and get it out on the road. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the Shmuseum, and welcome to a drive with the Lamborghini Revuelto. Let's have a quick introduction to this thing, the crazy car behind me, but we need to keep this one brief because I'm itching to go and take it for a drive. It's not every day you have the keys to a brand new Lamborghini Revuelto. This is, of course, their new V12 supercar. Now, I say supercar, but this is over 1,000 horsepower in a car with the most dramatic looks, and it's an ever-changing, almost benchmark that defines supercar and hypercar, a mixture of price, exclusivity and rarity, performance, you name it. But this is really the new definition of a supercar. This follows on from a great lineage of different Lamborghini models, the Aventador that had arrived 12 years prior, Murcielago, Diablo, Countach, Miura, all named after fighting bulls from Spain, as this is as well. The looks of the car are seriously dramatic, edgy, irregular. The shape of the wheel arch, for example, that isn't a completely round circle to match the wheels. The Ypsilon Y shapes that you start to spot throughout the whole of the design, everywhere you look around it. But of course now with a hybrid powertrain, but still, crucially, with a V12, a 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 supported by 3 electric motors and a battery for e-drive options as well, and we'll talk more about that. But as you see it here in bright orange, it stands out, it fits right in with the garage, and it's probably the car more than any other that people have asked me if I will one day buy, but I've been waiting to experience what it's like on the road, which is what today is about. I think we should get a little bit closer with some of the features of the car itself before we get it started and take it out. But wait for this one, because it is going to sound so good, and I can't wait to drive it. This particular car then has come from Lamborghini themselves, hence the Italian plate. Quite an unusual combination of an Italian plate with a right-hand drive car. It's one of their media and marketing pre-production vehicles, so a few things perhaps to take note of as we're driving it. But to run over some of the details again, 1,015 horsepower in total from the 6.5 litre NA V12, which makes 825 horsepower, plus the triple electric motors for an additional 190. We've got an 8-speed dual clutch transmission. One of the things that was always discussed from the Murcielago and the Aventador days, that fairly awkward automated manual, the single clutch robotized gearbox. This, of course, a massive leap ahead. The design, as I mentioned, has all of these Y shapes, the Ypsilon shapes that you spot everywhere around the bodywork. These were something we saw in the introduction with the design of the Sian, and of course carry through the design language across the whole Lamborghini family and portfolio. Around towards the back, you've got the active spoiler here, which will of course raise, and you can see how they will be thinking in advance of the future models like a Super Veloce or a Super Veloce Yota SVJ to come down the line. The rear tyres, I have to mention, these are 355 section tyres, absolutely enormous things back there. To show you inside, pop open the door, we've got a release just underneath. You need to wait a second for the window to drop down before you open it up, but inside, a massive step forwards from everything that's come before. The battery pack, 3.8 kilowatt hours, sits inside the central tunnel, of course helping keep the weight down, gives you a couple of miles of electric driving range. We've now got the digital screens, one for the driver dashboard, the central screen, and even a passenger display over there as well, along with all of the latest features and things that you would expect to find in such a car. There's actually a bit of storage space behind the seats up here, as well as the front trunk that you find here as well, which is quite interesting. Obviously, a supercar that's actually surprisingly usable, all things considered, and being a Lambo, it has the proper doors. You wouldn't have expected anything less from a car like this to do it properly. We've got a few other things. These floating buttresses, you'll notice you can see straight through. Airflow management, cooling of course as well, coming in towards the engine. Obviously a lot of work involved in being able to still offer something like that in the modern day. One of the big things, I guess, for many customers. And just look at that shape with those fighter jet style afterburner tailpipes that you have proudly sitting up high at the rear there. I do think though it's going to be time to get in and get this started in a second, and I can't wait to go and drive it. Swing in here to the carbon mono fuselage, the carbon tub that we are sat inside. Of course, as with recent Lambos, you can flip up the switch for a little bit of drama when you get everything started, then foot on the brake, and technically when you start it, by default, that is now on and in cheetah mode, your city town mode. You have all of these different controls for selecting your different drive. To start the engine, you can turn this through up to Strada. Yes, that sounds amazing. Valved, of course, at the moment. This is where you've then got Sport and you've got Corsa, and this is where you choose your different driving settings. So to go through hybrid, recharge, and set it all up depending what you're acquiring. Interestingly, you can only drive on E mode while the engine is warming, so there's no ability to rev it. Even if you press the throttle pedal, only E mode is possible. You can't rev the engine at all, so no cold start revs in a Revuelto. It is not an option. I noticed there are lots of beeps and things happening all over, but it very quickly recharges the electric battery as well, the high voltage battery, and you have all of the nice switch gear. Obviously a lot of attention paid to make sure that everything in here feels unique to this car. This design is all very dramatic, all very much about the feeling and the excitement of it. So pull the door down and get ready to pull this out, because I think we should go drive Revuelto. The first thing that I have to say here is that we might as well be in Italy right now. The weather today is glorious for driving a car like this. It is immensely complicated though. Tons of different settings, lots of different modes, and lots to run through. At the moment, we're in full electric, and one thing I notice is that when you put your foot down and you accelerate, it kind of keeps in an electric. You don't have a huge amount of range, a couple of miles, but cruising at 60 miles an hour, it's actually more responsive than I would have expected. Now, remember, I've only driven this car really pushing on, so I've not really done any miles in it. In the mid-range, in low rev ranges, going through all of the different settings like this. So if we turn it up into Strada, which is basically where you're going to drive it most of the time, V12 fires up with the most theatre that you could possibly expect, and certainly what you would want in the current day and age from a car like this. That's where at the moment we're in hybrid mode, but you also have recharge if you want to get all of the battery power back into it to then have maximum attack or to have more range in terms of driving, and it does that very quickly. It's a matter of minutes really to get it most of the way through the range. Obviously I'm currently driving in auto, which like many Lambos will shift up very, very early. Obviously a press of the button here with the selector, which is quite like the old style of the Hurricanes and the Aventadors, to drop it down, and then you're in manual and you start to have a little bit of play from it. So this is still in Strada, it's still fairly soft, but from about 3,500 RPM we've got a lot of noise from that. So it's gone back into auto there, because when you change modes it changes whether it's in manual or not. I'm going to go into sport, which will then give us manual here, and this is where it stiffens up, the ride is firmer, but this is where you're going to have all sorts of V12 cacophony of noise. I mean, listen to this. The one thing that's taking me time to adjust to, and this is quite a strange feeling, is because the sound is kind of familiar from Aventador, I want to instinctively lift off the throttle pedal to shift it like I would in the Aventador, which is obviously the single clutch. And obviously if you do that, that ends up being jerky. It's a dual clutch. You need to keep your foot exactly where it is to go through the gears. Oh my goodness. Oh, we've got a horse, so let's slow down. Don't want to scare a horse with a Revuelto, but that was kind of in the shadows around a blind corner, as you do. Yes, horse meet 1,000 horsepower. Obviously a horse actually has about 4 horsepower, not none, or not one, sorry. None, that would make no sense at all. Now though, just cruising, I guess we're back in behind some cars, unfortunately. I'll find some more open lanes up ahead of me. This is where, at the press of a single button here, it can revert it back into cheetah mode and into electric. Just one press of a button, which I quite like. Super simple, straight back into near on silent driving. We've got about half battery power at the moment, and
away you go. Things I like a lot, steering wheel. Steering wheel has this really small feel to it. I think too many manufacturers attempted to go really big and chunky with steering wheels, and I don't like that at all. I do find it a little bit of learning because of all the buttons. I'm used to that because I've driven a lot of other cars with cluttered steering wheels, Ferraris, Ford GT, etc. So it's something you learn and you get familiar with. Inside, it's pretty comfortable. There's not a huge amount of space. Like the headroom above me, and the seat is currently in the lowest setting, is only like an inch, 2 or 3 centimeters above me. And I'm not particularly tall. And I have heard from people that it isn't especially spacious inside. Seats are firm, better than the seats in Aventadors or Hurricanes, I have to say, but still definitely at the firm end, which is why I like to have it quite straight, because it just makes it a little bit more comfortable for me. There's at last some storage space. You know, you've got a cubby here for your phone, you've got some charging ports, you've got the things that you kind of want in a car that the Aventador never had. The Aventador never had this, I'm going to say, usability to it. This ability to actually put stuff somewhere, to be able to kind of hop in, and that was one of the charms of it, one of the things that made it appealing. Whereas somehow we subconsciously are drawn to impracticality and unsuitability. It just makes it a little bit more of a character. The road opens ahead of me, so an opportunity to enjoy this a little bit as we snake down the lanes, still in sport mode, so I haven't turned it all the way up into Corsa. But I've actually got to say, and this is something that really surprises me, for driving down fairly small roads, this isn't intimidatingly big. It's a big car, but you feel like you have a good understanding of where it is, and I'm not nervous per se about curbing the left side. I hope, touch on wood, that I'm not going to go and do that now, but it's certainly something that in a bigger car on these types of roads is often in the back of your mind. And to have this ferocious power plant, I mean, it's absolutely silly, available just under the smallest of presses of your right foot, and the pedals are very sensitive to the touch. Left foot braking takes a little bit of getting used to, I'm not going to lie, to get that smoothly operating. But down here, this thing is offering all of the theatre. It's a full-on pantomime. It's everything that you think a car like this should be. Now I can also turn it up into performance mode, which gives you more of the power delivery, all of the power, all of the craziness. And obviously these settings are all configured for different driving modes, but this is going back a little bit to what I said earlier, that there are so many of them, it's kind of hard to tell what you should be in, what should you be using, what should you be driving in. This is just, oh, as it warms up, it's getting more and more lively. We're going to go find a tunnel run a little bit later as well. I tell you what, I think Lambo were a little bit nervous about people being unleashed on public roads in these, but I gotta say, the ride is better than I expected, the feel and positioning is better than I expected, the sound is exactly as I expected, right? It's the reason for keeping the V12, even if it's slightly detrimental in terms of performance versus a smaller engine, as we've seen in more than enough drag races by CarWow and the likes between this and the SF90. But for actually driving, for actually using, this thing is just cool. It's just absolutely cool. And the more miles that I'm doing in it, the more I'm kind of understanding it. And of course, everybody's going to pay attention to it everywhere you go. As we're about to open up, I'm going to put it into Corsa. Maybe I'll regret that. And can we go into performance? There we go, Corsa and performance. So without being ESC off, pretty much full attack, different dashboard display now, but still really quite smooth. The ride isn't ferociously uncomfortable like the Hurricane STO's was. If I was driving this road in the STO, I wouldn't be particularly happy about it being in the full STO mode, Super Trofeo Omologato. But in here, it's actually not that bad. And if you keep the revs up, this is ridiculous. It's 2024, and you can still have a car like this. It comes with a high ticket of entry, the price point, spec one up highly and you will spend the best part of £600,000 on one here in the United Kingdom. But for driving down a road like this right now, even in Corsa mode, this is pretty fantastic. This is pretty fantastic. I guess one comment I do kind of have to make is that obviously combining a V12 with a hybrid powertrain is making for a pretty big and heavy car, and you certainly feel that it's a heavy car. Yes, things like rear wheel steer do a good job of virtually shortening the wheelbase and making it feel smaller than it is, but it's definitely got a weight to it, and that's pretty normal. I mean, you see things like the new M5, right, that's absolutely ballooned in its weight figure and become quite frankly ridiculous, whereas this, as things go, and considering it has 1015 horsepower, isn't all that bad, if I can say it like that. Power to weight is still pretty sweet, and the ride down here, we've got the wing up as well in Corsa mode, it's just fun, which is what a supercar should be, right? Massive performance and a massive smile on your face. The ability to make you think, what on earth am I driving? What am I doing? What is going on? I'm going to head out to a dual carriageway because obviously a little bit more space means more opportunity to hear even more V12. But the theatre that the car offers at road legal speeds is probably one of the most impressive things, because it's quite easy to make these days a car go really fast. But what's quite hard is to make a car really good fun all the way through the rev range without being at Mach 10, without being at full speed, because let's be real, if you're going full throttle in a 1000 horsepower supercar, you're in silly territory very quickly, and that can be a little bit of a problem. But in here, first gear, let's bring it out a bit. Up to over 9,000 RPM, and it sounds so good on the way there. It's really quick. I mean, we know it's really quick. It's not SF90 quick, it's not hypercar quick, but it's very usably quick. It actually feels, when you're pressing on hard, that it's almost rear driven. Of course, there's a rear bias to the four-wheel drive system. It is permanent four-wheel drive with the electric motors. And in fact, when you're reversing, the way it does that is quite clever as well, because it's effectively using the electric motor. So the engine is idling to reverse or to even creep. So as you pull away, even if the engine is on, it's using the electric motors. And then of course, if you want to recharge the battery, it will effectively raise the revs a little bit higher. So if you put it into recharge mode on here, you'll be idling with higher revs to use that engine power to charge up the battery quicker, which is all nice and clever, right? It's all that stuff that they've thrown into it. So whichever mode you're in, however you want the settings and things, it can be doing whatever you'd like from it. I guess probably sport is the right mode. Corsa on the road, much more pleasant than I expected, especially when you compare to the Aventadors and even the likes of the STO. It's quite funny with the van coming past here, because I'm sticking to the speed limit. Sorry, I'm boring, but as soon as we exit from the roundabout and I put my foot down, we'll be gone and we'll be away, which is, yeah, what it's all about. The theatre, the drama, the excitement, the craziness. You know, there are things that I'm going to say aren't perfect. You know, some of the controls aren't perfect. For me, the seating position isn't perfect, and the price tag is very, very high. But if you want the excitement and the feeling and the craziness and just the sheer insanity of it, there's not much that comes close to this, and we haven't even yet gone through the tunnel. That's where it's going to get even more insane. This is now the bit I've been looking forward to, the famous tunnel. Lower the windows slightly, start dropping down the gears. Pretty empty around me, second gear. This is insane. It doesn't have that massive snap on the downshift. What on earth? And obviously it's so fast that that slightly restricts the fun that you can have. As you get up to the red line, it's simply ridiculous. What a silly thing. What a silly, silly, silly thing. So much fun, so much stupidity. There we go, that was a nice downshift sound. You get some of those out of nowhere. This is so much fun. Right, so there are some more things I'd like to show you about this, starting from the outside, some things that matter in the real world. If you own one of these cars, what you're going to do with it. And one of those is to talk about the luggage space. So from the key, a press and hold of the button will pop open the front. And I'm going to point out at this stage, by the way, Most of the bodywork is carbon fiber, including the bonnet, so you do not want to damage a panel like this. It would be incredibly expensive. But inside, you've got a surprisingly decent amount of space. Now, we've got some electric charging cables in here, but take those out and you can see you could fit a small wheelie suitcase or two in there. One thing you might be wondering, though, is about this, the Type 2 charging port for the battery. Now, you can plug it in and charge it up if you want, but the basic idea is that you would park the car on full charge or just plug it in to charge it, which will happen in an hour or two, and then let it stay on its own because it will hold that charge. The high voltage batteries don't drain in the same way as the 12-volt batteries, and of course this car, like any other, has a 12-volt battery which needs to be left on a smart charger, on a C-Tech, that type of thing. So you don't need to plug it in twice, but you technically could, one at the back, one at the front. And if you do plug it in at the front, the clever thing there is that you've got this additional catch, which you can lower down so that you can then close it, leaving about a 5 centimeter gap so that the cable can come out without getting caught on anything, which is just kind of fun, kind of clever, nice little detail to have added. And obviously close that back down. Needs quite a firm press, which means you do go and leave a handprint on the front, but such is life. You can probably slightly adjust that. Other things to point out, of course, the way it sits now, as we pull back in, the lift system was still up. I popped the lift system back down now, sits very snug in the arches. These are the sport tyre as opposed to the race tyre. You could have it on the even stickier rubber, but certainly for the type of driving I've been doing, that suits. On a warm day like today, what's interesting is that you can still get a little bit loose, but I think that makes it that kind of edgy, exciting drive. That's a plus point at the end of the day. And obviously then you have that wedge shape. As you look at the car from the side, right, the way the roof line just continues in one consistent line down towards the back, down towards this point, which gives you that sense of, again, excitement and drama. And I'm going to draw your attention to this. Between the exhaust tailpipes is a sticker that says caution high temperature, because it gets very hot back there. Very, very, very hot. And it would be quite easy to walk into that and leave yourself a nice burn mark. So at least they warn you, watch out. Don't touch one of these that's just been revving or making some crazy noise. And it just looks mad. Obviously you can upgrade it to change all the gloss black to have carbon fiber. This car's spec comes in at about £521,000 as we see it here. Like I say, you can get closer to 600 if you had even more options and go even crazier with it. I think I want to show you a few more things though on the inside. So let me step back in. Swinging back in here, then a few more things to point at. I do like all of the screens. I'm just going to start, or at least turn on the ignition for a second. If you turn on the car, actually turn it fully on, one more press. Of course, that's where we're in electric at the moment. But there are some cool things here. For example, if you go into vehicle and you go into dynamics, inside here, what you can do with these different screens and settings is send them either to the passenger display or to the right side of the driver's display. So at the moment we've got LDVI up there, but say for example you wanted engine status, you can press on there and literally flick it over and it changes what's on that screen. If you would like TPMS, your tyre pressure sensors, flick them over and it changes what's there. And you can do the same thing to the other side. So if your passenger wants LDVI, flick that over that way. If they want TPMS, again, same thing. This is quite cool and quite clever, and of course you've got all your regular infotainment and stuff in there as well. I just like that they've done all of that. I think it's neat. I think it's a very fun approach, just new tech, new ideas, right? Having all of these screens and all these different settings. I need to mention also, if you look backwards, that view is unreal. Looking across the engine, it's quite a narrow view, and when the wing's up, of course, you lose a little bit more of it as well, but it's pretty spectacular. It is stunning. And then even look at the headliner as well, if you can just see this with the hexagonal quilting pattern that has. It's a cool interior, it's a cool place to be. Obviously a turn of this and it will fire up the engine, which just has that sharp snap and sounds amazing. You've got your indicators here, your wipers over on this side. You can also use this to change the view if you want to do it just from this side quickly, to go through the different screens and settings. And then things like your hazard warning lights with that familiar style button that we've seen on Lambos of previous generations as well. Not much by way of an armrest storage, a little storage area here, a little armrest pad, and obviously you can configure, customize and change the whole setup of the interior to your heart's content as well. Lots of different things that you can play with, which is all part of it as well. And like I mentioned earlier, this, very familiar from the Hurricane, is really nice too. And of course, to switch it off, press the button. You can't get through that anymore, you do have to lift it up. You used to be able to squeeze through it, but now you have to lift it up and actually physically press it to step out. I guess it's more part of the drama, isn't it? It's part of what all of this is about. Now, as much as I'd love to do a little bit of a comparison between that and that, as per the loan agreement, I'm not allowed to at this stage. So we'll have to stay tuned for something like that in the future, because at the end of the day, that is a big heavyweight hitter matchup, right, from Italy. Anyway, Revuelto, that's what it's been about today, or Revuelto, effectively how you pronounce it. It's quite complicated whether you use Spanish, English, American, or Italian, given it's a Spanish fighting bull name. It's clearly a very impressive piece of kit, and to drive it today on the road has been a major eye-opener, because I was slightly thinking the reason I hadn't been able to drive one up to this point was going to be in some way linked to what it's actually like on the road. I think probably the reality is, like any new, very clever technology item, it's been plagued with some issues. The SF90 similarly, AMG 1, Valkyrie, you know the drill. It's been the same with this, so the early cars have suffered and been a little bit plagued with that. But now that I've been, out driving this today, 50 miles or so added to the clock driving it, it's done brilliantly, and it's been a lot of fun, a very impressive drive. So I think I'm going to wrap that one up for now. What an awesome experience. I might have to give Craig at Lamborghini Pangborn a call, scratch my head a little bit and think about that one. We shall see. That's it for this time though. Thank you very much for watching, guys. As always, I appreciate your support an awful lot. But that's it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.